Hello everyone, I am Barbara Scott. I'm chair of the Association of Reproductive Reflexologists, and I've been asked to speak to you during this very sad week of remembering all of those who have lost a baby or babies due to miscarriage, and to talk to you about ways of moving forward. And one of the things I really want to start with is that it's really important that you take your time and that you don't rush. Everybody is an individual, and it's really important that we acknowledge the loss that we have been through, mark it or celebrate it in some way, that the fact that this little person has been a part of you for however long or however short a time, and don't rush yourselves. Just take your time to recover, to rest, to make sure that you feel ready before you begin to think about moving forwards. I think that's key. The other thing to say is that getting support is also really important. I'm sure I'm not saying anything that many others have said. You've got the wonderful support of MIS, and there are so many other organisations out there that support couples who have lost a baby, and I would say reach out to them. The other thing to consider is to find some counselling support, some psychotherapy support that may also help you to process what you have been through, and finding those who really specialise in this field, so really understand what you have been through. It's just key. So first thing is, don't rush. The second is a slightly lengthier process in a way, because it's about learning to take care of yourselves again, and kind of going back to basics and making sure you're in a really good place to move forward. So not just physiologically or physically, but mentally and emotionally. And sometimes those two things are intrinsically linked. It's a process. As I'm sure some of you will know, I don't want to go over and repeat things that have already been said. But what I'm going to talk about is how we would work as reproductive reflexologists. And one of the first things I will say is we very much advocate an integrative approach, a patient-centered approach. So you are at the center of this. And reflexology, if you choose to use that as your modality, is a little part of that process. But we as practitioners very much understand that we may have a role to play, but it's probably part of a bigger picture. And one of the first things we want to encourage our clients or patients to do is learn how to take care of themselves again. And one of the key things I always talk about is never be afraid of going back to basics. So when something as dreadful as this has happened, what we want is answers. And sometimes those answers can be incredibly difficult to find. And also sometimes what happens is we get catapulted into things which are quite complicated, that, you know, in search of an answer. And I always say, let's go back and look at the very basics of what is happening for your fertility, because what happens in terms of your fertility also impacts upon your risk factors for miscarriage. And sometimes those very simple things can get overlooked in the search for the answers. And so when I'm working with patients, the first thing I do is say, let's go back and have a look at all those very basic component parts before or alongside looking at the more complicated tests that might be available. So in terms of women, one of the key things, and probably the most important things that can happen after you've had a miscarriage, is that your cycle becomes disrupted. It loses its rhythm. And that can happen really at any point, and it can happen for a whole variety of reasons. Firstly, from a hormonal point of view, your hormones will have been completely disrupted, and so that can disturb your menstrual cycle. And so actually making sure your menstrual cycle is back and functioning properly is really important. And it's important in terms of its regularity. It's important to make sure that you are ovulating again. And one of the key things to say here is that women can menstruate but not ovulate. And so using a method to determine whether you're ovulating or not is really important. Now, for standard cycles, maybe using something like fertilityfriend.com and taking your temperature and charting, just so that you can see that you are actually ovulating. And they have a very robust method, Fertility Friend, because they send you a series of little emails. They've got packed full of information on their website. They're a really useful resource. So I would advocate that first of all. If you're struggling with that, or if you have something like polycystic ovarian syndrome or something like endo or endometriosis, which is more likely to disrupt your cycle, and it's more likely to cause a problem in getting it back on track again, you might want to think about something like OvuSense, which uses a little, either a wrist or a vaginal sensor to help take your temperature, your core body temperature, and that gives you more accurate readings. One of the things I will say is these ovulation predictor sticks are not always so accurate, and they're really not accurate for women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So do seek some support and help in getting your cycle back on track. That's really key. And make sure you're ovulating. Make sure you're producing the right kind of cervical mucus at the right time. But the very important thing for women who have had a previous miscarriage is to monitor your progesterone levels. So when you ovulate and that little follicle in your ovary ruptures and it releases that egg, what forms in that ruptured follicle is a corpus luteum, a little yellow mass, and it secretes progesterone. And it's really important in terms of implantation success and also in maintaining early pregnancy. Okay, so it's key to make sure that you are producing the right amount of progesterone to support those processes and support early pregnancy. And if you use charting in some form, or the other piece of kit that I recommend is OvuSense, it means you're able to monitor your progesterone levels, and I would suggest that you do that just to make sure that is not part of the problem. If it is part of the problem and you know it is, then please go and seek some additional support because there are lots of pieces of research now that show that actually supporting progesterone in women who have had a miscarriage and for whom there is a known progesterone issue, or someone who is more likely to have an issue with progesterone. So women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, women with a luteal phase defect or progesterone deficiency, and women, of course, who have had a previous miscarriage, assessing and supporting progesterone becomes really important. And it's certainly something that we do as practitioners because we understand how important it is. So those key things can really, really help. The other thing I'm going to talk about is men. So what we know when we're talking about fertility issues and early miscarriage and chromosomal issues is that men are just as likely to be involved. So men are involved in about 50% of all cases, and sadly, you men get overlooked, and it's something I'm very passionate about in getting the message out there, to make sure that you are robustly tested. Now, you may have had a semen analysis already, and it may say that you've got plenty of sperm and they're moving well and they're well formed, or they may be on the margins. It's very important to get that retested. But the key thing is to have your sperm DNA fragmentation tested if you've had a miscarriage. So in the head of the sperm are the lovely little strands of DNA. And in men, these little, well, and in women too, who've maybe not got such great egg quality, but I'm going to talk about men specifically. So the little strands of DNA get little breakages in them called fragmentations. And when the egg is produced, if it's really good quality, it can repair up to about 24% of breakages in the sperm DNA, but beyond that, it can't cope. And so what tends to happen is you get difficulties with implantation, you get embryos that are not good quality, so they don't then implant very well, or they do implant and then you get lots of early repeat miscarriages, or you go beyond the early stages and lose a baby that may have a chromosome issue. So sperm DNA fragmentation is a really important test, and it's not carried out as part of a standard semen analysis, but there are lots and lots of places where you can go and get yourself checked or look at your risk factors. So a new website has been launched called testhim.co.uk, I think it is. It's been set up, it's free to access, so men can access it from their own homes. It's a questionnaire to complete. The website is absolutely crammed full of information, but it means that you can answer the questionnaire and the algorithm will tell you what your risk factors are in terms of fertility issues and miscarriage issues. And as I say, it's free to access, and what it will then do is make some recommendations for you in terms of what tests might be most appropriate, maybe a supplement that may help with specifically with sperm DNA fragmentation, and referrals on to for further treatment if that is something that would be recommended. So that's the first thing to say about men. The other thing is that there are links also in TestHim for you to get further support. So there's a wonderful organisation called Him Fertility. There's also another organisation. These have Facebook pages as well, so you can just go and join them. You can just observe you from the comfort of your own home. Don't have to speak if you don't want to. You can just go and read, listen to podcasts, etc. So the other is called The Man Cave, set up by a man called Kevin Button. Him Fertility comes under the umbrella now of Fertility Network UK, and so it's worth going and exploring. Again, from the comfort of your own home, you're not risking anything, but you are able to glean lots of information about whether there might be an issue for you, and making sure you get the most appropriate health and support. It is really important, and also where to go and seek further testing if that is what you need. So I would really recommend that you do that. The other key things are to take care of yourselves, and this is simple, it's not complicated, but it is really, really important that what you are doing is taking care of yourselves mentally, emotionally and physically. So seeking help from maybe a trained counsellor, your support group, who this little podcast is for. That help and support will make sure that you are able to get through it, and that you're getting the right kind of advice. The other thing I would say is that one of the simple things is to look at what you are eating, drinking, and your exercise. Okay, so exercise is really good for you. Cardiovascular exercise is super good for you. So getting your heart rate up when you're exercising. What's not so great when you're trying to get pregnant is muscle building exercise. So, weights, when you're building muscle, because actually, particularly for men, it diverts testosterone to kind of building muscle rather than really, keeping you fit and well and keeping your sperm fit and well. We need testosterone, all the testosterone we can get for fit, healthy sperm. So those things are really, not easy, not difficult to do, to make little simple changes. So walking is great, swimming is great, things like Pilates, yoga, little short bursts of runs, 5K runs, something like that. Going to the gym as long as it's cardiovascular, not weight building, that's really important. Keeping up your fluids, also really important, and I mean water. So finding a way for you to enjoy water would be really good, because keeping yourself well hydrated is known to have all kinds of health benefits. And putting in the right nutrition. And this can be a tricky one, because when we're feeling rotten and we're feeling sad and we're feeling upset, I know myself, the one thing I want to do is just eat lots of chocolate. And it does help to make us feel a bit better. But there comes a point where you might feel ready to move on. And when you are, it's really important that you put in super good nutrition, because if you're putting in good fuel, your body's going to work better. You will feel better. Your energy levels will feel much better. And what we know is when we are not feeling at our best, when we're feeling stressed and anxious, upset, worried, the first thing that is affected is our reproduction. And so if we feel back in control and are able to feel that we can do something constructive, and that is putting in good fuel, then it can help to be part of the picture to getting us back on track. And actually, just simple things, just eating, your fruit and veg every day, making sure that you're putting in the best quality food that you can, making simple meals at home. It doesn't have to be complicated, just simple, straightforward things. Giving up smoking if you feel you can, getting support if you feel you can't, and watching your alcohol intake and your caffeine intake, because there is lots and lots of research out there. If you just go and use Google and read scholarly articles, you'll find loads of research. So get some support and help. Go and see a nutritionist if you feel that that's what's going to help. Just make sure you're putting the best quality fuel in. And watch your alcohol. So we know that alcohol, for both men and women, impacts upon sperm and egg health, and you need super duper quality sperm and egg. If you do want some support and you want to use reflexology as part of that, it's a super tool. It's very good in terms of managing your stress levels. It's very good at improving your cycle, your menstrual cycle function in women. It's very good at supporting and helping you to get pregnant. It's helpful in terms of improving sperm quality and motility, etc. And particularly if you've got a progesterone issue, it can be useful in terms of helping to maintain progesterone levels. So it's as I say, it's a part of the picture. If it's something you feel you would like to use, we do have find a practitioner on our website, which is Reproductive reflexologists.org, where you can go and find lots more information about what we do and how we work, and see if you can find a practitioner through that website. So I'm just going to finish up by saying I wish you well on your journey to parenthood, and don't be afraid of seeking support and help that feels right and feels comfortable for you.